Hey, I'm Mia Hemstad. I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I'm a trauma-informed self-care coach. I also live with diagnosed PTSD and depression. I started sharing my mental wellness journey online in 2017 when I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and anxiety. And since then, I've heard from hundreds of women who all struggle with the same thing, putting ourselves last. This is a struggle that's keeping so many women burned out and unhappy, through no fault of our own, by the way. I've been working on my own healing as an abuse survivor since 2013. But when I became a mom, I really started to do the inner work of figuring out why I was putting myself last and how to start prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. This podcast is about sharing all of those lessons with you. So if you're interested in hearing honest stories, life advice, and inspiration that encourages you to make your health, happiness, and well-being a priority, then definitely stick around. Welcome to your No Longer Last journey. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I am excited that you're joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about the pressure on women to be exceptional and how to release it. I'm very excited about today's topic because I am a recovering perfectionist and workaholic, and I'll be honest, the pressure to be excellent at everything is something that I feel every single day. So I'm working on this with you, and I kind of just wanted to use today's episode to share my epiphanies. But before we dive in, a few personal notes. I have really been struggling with my sleep. I know that this is something I talk about often, especially on my Instagram where I share kind of more day-to-day updates, but it's just been worse than normal. I had several months of doing pretty well, I would say between October and December of last year, but since January or February rather, it's just been like on this sharp decline. So I'm actually not going to be releasing any new episodes in June in order to give myself more space to focus on my health. I started the process of researching certain specialists to help me with my sleep issues. I think it might be connected to my PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And I'm not really being treated for PMDD. I'm being treated for something else. And so really I'm being treated for my depression and anxiety. So I'm just wondering if finding a specialist in that specific area of women's health could potentially help me with my sleep, but we'll see. It's an ongoing battle, and I mentioned earlier in the year that I was going to do an episode on what was helping me sleep well because had been sleeping well for more than 3 months in a row. But zooming out, I realized that that's not something I want to make an episode about because it's still so erratic, and maybe if there's a time in my life where I have been sleeping well for a year straight, I'll make an episode on what helped me. But for now, I just want to say to everybody that struggles to get a decent night's sleep, to feel rested when you wake up, for anyone who wakes up every day feeling so exhausted and not feeling like yourself, I just want to say that I'm hugging you so tightly right now because it's so painful and I'm emotional right now just talking about it. I've been going through a really hard time with it. So that kind of segues me into a couple of other things, which is number one, I had recently launched the No Longer Last weekly check-in, which was this beautiful space every Sunday to get together for 1 hour and journal, set our self-care intentions, and for you to ask me for support. And I had planned this back in early January when I was feeling really great. And then things took a sharp decline in February, and I've been holding on and trying to figure things out. That, in addition to the fact that my son, who is 7 now, when I told him that I was now busy on Sundays in the evening, he was like, "Mom, well, can't you just tell them that you don't work on Sundays? Can't you just tell them that like you're busy? I want to spend time with you." And I realized that I never really considered my children when making this decision. And if you listen to my episode on the 5 mistakes I made as a new mom, one of them was, I wish I had spent more time with my kids when they were younger. They're still young, obviously, but particularly my first child, my brother moved in with me when my son was only 10 months old. He was still a baby. I was still breastfeeding him, and all of a sudden I was handing him over to sitters and friends and family members because I needed to caregive for my brother who was literally in a crisis, a health crisis. And so all of these things came together, my health, the fact that, I really want to kind of repair some of the time I lost, particularly with my first child. And it just made me realize this is not the best time for me to launch something new. especially something that I do on the weekend, which is the only time I really have to connect with my kids. So I have since closed the weekly check-in. Thank you to those of you who participated, who joined, who showed so much enthusiasm and love. I appreciate you. And I just want to say that it's not the right season for me, and hopefully that season will come around, but I'm going to be focusing so much on my health because I need to practice what I preach. That being said, I still am running the No Longer Last Journey 12-month coaching program, which is a beautiful opportunity for you to receive monthly support from me and classes and reflection guides to help you practice one self-care practice each month, because I'm a big fan of allowing our overwhelmed brains, if you're a stressy, depressy girl like me, to focus on one thing at a time and to do it in community. So that's still available. And make sure you're on my email list so that if I ever do like a special promotion or a special discount or any special bonuses along with that coaching program, you will be aware of it. Because I will be continuing to email all of you in June. I'm trying to get back into my letter writing and a little bit more personal letter writing, especially now that I'm on a new health journey, trying to figure out my PMDD, trying to find specialists in Europe to help me. So no new episodes in June, but you'll hear from me via email. And I'm still posting on Instagram once a day, especially since it's Mental Health Month. May is Mental Health Month, and I am hosting, it's like not even that big of a deal. It sounds like a big deal, but it's a daily challenge. It's called the No Longer Last Challenge. And I'm just encouraging you to do one small thing every day to take care of yourself. And so I'm sharing what I'm doing and just kind of talking through it and sharing some tips and advice, and hopefully that can inspire you to just pause once a day to do something for yourself. So those are all of my life updates. Now we're going to dive into today's episode, and I'm going to be honest with you. I prepared for this episode the way that I normally do, but because I've been so tired, I'm kind of struggling to put two words together. And so hopefully this episode isn't too unhinged, but this topic is just too important to not do my best to just talk through it, because I know that I'm not the only woman who feels this immense pressure to be exceptional and to be excellent. I had an epiphany on Friday. I was going out for coffee with my husband, and I just felt this pressure, and I've been getting better and better at feeling where things physically are for me instead of just having all of my emotions in my head. And for me, pressure feels like this constriction in my chest, particularly like around my heart. Like it feels like I can't really be me or the fullest expression of me because I have to be the perfect version of me, not just the authentic version of me. I have to be the perfect version of me, the version of me that doesn't ruffle feathers, the version of me that is more palatable, the version of me that doesn't make mistakes. And being that version of me, it's painful. It's hard. And I think a lot of us are like that. And I think a lot of us subconsciously do that. And I want all of us to just take a moment in this podcast episode to talk through that and think through that, because I think it's costing women a lot. I think it's costing us a lot to be so excellent all the time. I was processing that I feel the need to be excellent as a mother, as a homemaker, whether or not my home is organized, I think reflects my excellence as a homemaker or lack thereof. I feel the need to be excellent at work. I feel the need to be excellent in my marriage. I feel the need to be excellent in terms of how I present myself, my hair, my makeup, or lack thereof. Like I'm not wearing makeup right now, and you probably could tell that if you're watching this on YouTube. And it takes a lot of internal work for me to allow myself to be seen in this way, even though this is how I prefer to be. This is how I prefer to be, makeup free, and yet it's very, very hard for me to do it because there's all of this messaging that we've received since we were kids, layer upon layer upon layer, that makes us as women feel the need to be excellent and perfect and to present this image that isn't sustainable. And like I remember when I was like eating breakfast one day and I was like putting large pieces of pancake in my mouth, and I remember it's because I was just learning as a child, I was like 8 or 9, how to use my fork in a way to cut my pancake in small pieces. And it was like very laborious because when you're learning something new, it's like hard to do and it's exhausting. So I was like putting large pieces of pancake in my mouth, and my dad literally looked at me and was like, if you keep eating like that, no one will marry you. And I remember being like, in that moment, what was communicated to me was, even how you eat needs to be in a way that pleases others, or you're going to end up alone. And then I remember something similar said to me when I wanted to wear a certain kind of dress. And I was told by my dad, that I had no boobs to put in the dress, that my boobs weren't big enough for the dress that I was wearing. And I was about to go out to prom. I was feeling so beautiful. I had bought a dress that happened to be by the Ross, like it was in Ross and it was by the changing room, and it was $18 and I only had $20 to spend. And I just felt like the luckiest girl that day to be able to find a dress with the $20 that I had to spend at Ross. And it was perfect. It was for this prom that I was invited to by my friends for Alice in Wonderland. It was the perfect theme. And I was told that I didn't look good enough to wear the dress. I didn't have the anatomy needed, apparently, to wear the dress. And I could go on and on in so many ways, whether it was at work or it was at school or it was at home, where I have been made to feel, or at mom groups even, where I've been made to feel like if you're not excellent, you won't be loved. And that's what I really want to get to in this episode, because I think a lot of us have been fed this idea that excellence is a commitment to greatness and that it's something that is good and beautiful. And I think that that's true, but in very narrow circumstances. I think that it's true when it's something that really matters to you. But I think when we are trying to be excellent as a means to please others, and I think when we're trying to be excellent at honestly more than one or two things in life, it's harmful. And I really think it's important that we reflect on that and actually ask ourselves, am I trying to be excellent in something that doesn't matter to me? And if I am, what is that costing me? How is that hurting me? How is that taking away from other things that matter more to me? That's what I want to talk through today. I have 3 things I want to share with you to help you unpack this for yourself. And I'm working on it too, because it is, I think, very sneaky and causes us to really just wear ourselves out. I really think one of the reasons why we as women don't have room for the joy, for the carefreeness. I don't know many carefree women. I honestly, off the top of my head, can't tell you of any carefree women. And I don't think we're allowed to be. I think it's seen as irresponsible. I think those of us who are raised as good girls, those of us who became martyr moms, like, we don't know how to be carefree. Being carefree feels wrong. It feels irresponsible. It feels unsafe, selfish. It feels self-indulgent. And I think what it really is like, if we were carefree, maybe more of us would be less anxious. Maybe more of us would be happy. Maybe taking care of ourselves wouldn't be so hard. Because I don't know about you, but I still have to move mountains inside of me in order to justify certain things. Certain things that shouldn't be that hard to justify. Certain things that when my husband wants those things or, craves those things, he just does it. Like, it's not a big deal. Yeah, so that's what we're going to get to the bottom of today. And I'm excited. So the first thing is, I want you to recognize how you might be using exceptionalism or excellence, which is just perfectionism in disguise. How are you using that as protection? I already touched on this earlier, but, for instance, I had all these very traumatic messages put into me by my parents and by school and like the education system, that if you're not perfect, you can be fired. If you're not perfect, you won't get married. Like, no one will love you. If you're not perfect, you are not considered beautiful. You can't wear the nice dress. No one will want to dance with you at prom. If you're not perfect, like, you're not going to get the raise, or you're not going to get a seat at the table. And the thing is that that's rooted in some truth, okay? It's rooted in some truth, especially, I can only speak from my experience as a Black woman. And yes, I'm mixed race, but 2 white people, apparently, because I moved from Guam to the United States. The moment I moved to the United States, everyone around me called me the Black girl from Guam. Like, that was my name. So if you're watching this and you're like, you're not Black, this is just my experience, okay? I'm half Black, and that's how people perceive me. And I quickly started to learn about this idea of Black excellence. And, again, the idea of excellence seems so great and everything, but it started to cripple me. I felt like I had to be excellent to have a seat at the table. And the fact of the matter is that is true. The same thing with women who struggle to get a seat at the table that in fields that are predominantly filled with men. And so what I'm trying to say is there's a reason why we feel this way. okay? That this feeling is not unfounded and it doesn't come out of nowhere. I hate when people act like everything is all in our heads. What I am saying is this pressure to be exceptional is not all in our heads. It's real. But what I am saying is, even if this pressure to be exceptional is real, is it worth it? Is it worth subscribing to? Is it worth living by? And can we all decide that it's not worth it and that we need to write our own rules and deprogram all of this crap and decide to live life on our own terms in a way that actually honors what we want and need to be carefree, authentic human beings? That's the question. So, are you using exceptionalism or excellence as protection? When I moved to Portugal, I decided that I was not going to be Black excellent anymore. I was not going to try to be excellent. That I was going to let good enough be good enough. My new mantra was good enough is still good. Why was good enough bad? Why did I adopt this idea that good enough is mediocre? That good enough is complacent? There was only two modes for me. It was like, don't try at all or work so hard to be the most exceptional person in the room. And so I adopted this new mindset. I'm going to be Black basic. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be Black basic. And so far it has served me well. It has helped me decenter work. It has helped me put work in its appropriate box. It has helped me untangle my worth from my work and receive feedback in such an open way. If someone doesn't like something I've done, or if a client has feedback or says I've made a mistake, I'm like, oh my gosh, thanks for the feedback. It means nothing about me. And it's because I've decided I'm not going to try to be exceptional at work. I'm just going to do the best that I can and let it be enough, because it is enough. And so I really think that we need to analyze where we're using exceptionalism as protection in order to be liked or to get a seat and all of those things. And so, and granted, we all have to play the game of life, right? So if your career is really important to you and you know that you need to be exceptional to be in those rooms and your career is one of your top priorities in your life, do what you need to do. But then do you also need to be exceptional at your fitness? Do you also need to be training for a marathon? Do you also need to be exceptional as a mom and cook home cooked meals every single day? What are your 1 to 2 most important priorities in your life? And focus in on those and let the rest go. Because again, like I said in the beginning, there's nothing wrong with excellence or exceptionalism, if it's 1 or 2 things that matter to you. It's toxic when we let society pressure us into having to be exceptional at everything, from how we look to how we dress to how we present ourselves to how we speak to how we eat. It's I think about when women eat, and we're talking, we cover our mouths, or no, not even when we're talking, a lot of women when we're chewing, we cover our mouths. And when I'm eating out and I look at guys when they're chewing or talking or both, they're not covering their face. It's weird. It's almost like we all received this message when we were kids that it's ugly when we eat. We have to pretend that we don't eat and that we don't fart. And it's crazy. It's so insane. And so I'm just how many layers of this are there that is hurting us? So for me right now, my top priority in life 100% is my relationship with my children, my husband, and myself. And anything that isn't serving that, it takes a complete backseat. I have decided I'm not going to be exceptional at those things. I want to be super fit and I want to go back to dance and I want to dance in a really full-time kind of way, but that's not an area of focus for me. I need to get my sleep on track, which, in turn helps me with my relationships and things like that. So I just want you to think about are you trying to go 100% on 10 different things right now? Because you need to remember that you only have 100%. You don't have 500%. So you can't go 100% on 5 different things. You can go, 80% on the things that matter to you a lot, and then 20% on the things that are okay, and divvy up that 20 5, 5, 5, 5. And I know this sounds brutal to hear for all of us who are ambitious, for all of us who love to strive and pursue and achieve, and for all of us who are recovering from perfectionism. But it's just the reality. And I think that it's scary. It's scary for me to say that out loud and to have to admit that. And I'll be honest, I fail at it often. I fail at it a lot. I try to think that I can be exceptional at my day job. I work 9 to 5 in a nonprofit. I try to think I can be exceptional at my coaching business, which I love and, do in my spare time. And then I think I can do that while also being exceptional at motherhood, figuring out my health problems, my marriage, and then also like trying to have some joy in my life outside of like just like my creative pursuits. But like, I like to go to the beach and lay down. I like to read books. I like to go to the mall. I like to go shopping, and I have to be honest with myself that I can't be exceptional at all those things. I can't pursue excellence in all those areas. And so what are those 1 to 2 things for you that matter the most to you? And can you let yourself be just okay or even not great at the other things? The second thing I wanted to share is that you need to decide what actually matters to you the most in your life. And I think I already kind of touched on this, but ask yourself, what lights me up? What brings me joy? What makes me feel like my most authentic, carefree self? And maybe you don't know what that is. Maybe you've lost yourself in motherhood like I did, and you're still on the path of trying to discover what makes you happy. I know I am, and part of that process for me, and I'm still trying to get there because I typically work on my self-care stuff on the weekend. I put a couple of hours in and then I do some household stuff and then I'm with my kids. But I'm trying to carve out some time on the weekend where I just ask myself, what do I want to do right now? Like, what do I want to do? And so actually after I finish recording my podcast episodes for today, I'm going to go to the mall and I'm going to go to Sephora for the very first time. And I'm going to allow myself to buy, I've been wanting to buy Rihanna's Fenty Beauty like foundation. It's like a very light, it's not a foundation, it's like a skin tint. Just to try it out because I don't like foundation, but I like having a little something on when I have work meetings. And I know might not sound like a big deal to some people, but I have a lot of money trauma. I struggle to spend money on myself, especially on things that are not like life or death. And so spending the time to go to the mall alone and go to a store and just kind of buy something that feels like a luxury to me is a form of bougie self-care that I need in order to heal the part of me that feels unworthy of that. But in order to do all that stuff that I just said, I need time and space for that, right? So when I decide what matters the most to me, one of those things is my relationship with myself and healing that relationship with myself. It becomes very clear how I need to spend my time and what needs to be important and what needs to be deprioritized. So yeah, and I also just want you to know if you're somebody that wants to achieve a lot in life like I am, and it scares you to think about deprioritizing something. I know, like, for example, I really want to write a book one day and it's not going to happen right now, and that's okay. I want to remind you that things can be in seasons. Like eventually, hopefully, like for instance, my ability to hold my boundaries firm with work and protect my time with myself, my children, and my husband. And hopefully that will become easy. I'll be honest with you, it's not easy for me right now. Like I have to make such a conscious choice to practice my own self-care. I have to make such a conscious choice to close my laptop and be present with my family at dinner. I have to make such a conscious choice to connect with my kids on the weekend. And saying that out loud sounds like kind of scary, but it's true. And it's because I have been working since I was a child. I was a housekeeper and a babysitter since I was a child and working in my family's businesses at our cafe. And I don't know a life where you don't work 7 days a week. And I am trying to build that life for myself. And it's hard. And so until that becomes second nature, I won't be prioritizing other things. So once the thing that you're working on becoming great at becomes second nature, then you can maybe pivot and add one other thing that you want to pursue and be excellent at, right? Because then the other things happen automatically. So if you're scared at the idea of whittling down your priorities to 1 to 2 things, and the reason why I say 1 to 2 is because if I'm speaking to the right audience, and you're like me, you have not that much time or energy to go around. And so I really don't believe in like 5 priorities for people like us. I really believe in 1 to 2. I know it's hard. I know we like to do it all, but I really believe in 1 to 2. So just remember that it's a season and that you will be able, once you get this all, once it becomes second nature, you will be able to pivot and prioritize other things in the future. So don't be scared. Okay. And then the last thing is to start asking yourself, how can I lower the bar here? So if you do a brain dump, or you're just like thinking about the things that you have been prioritizing or the things that you have been saying, oh, I need to be great at this. Even if you don't realize it, I want you to think through it. Like really think through the pressure you put on yourself, or the pressure you let society put on you, or you've been subscribing to all these years without realizing it. And ask yourself, okay, I've been expecting myself to like work out for an hour every day. And like, I even did this today when I went on a walk. I felt like I didn't have the energy to go on a jog, so I shouldn't even try. And it's like, why can't a walk be good enough? Mia, like I'm talking to myself. This is what I said. I was like, Mia, you're struggling with your sleep. You have no energy. You wake up every day exhausted. But you also expect yourself to jog and then come home and do 10 minutes of abs. Like what? I was like, I want to jog Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I want to do abs Tuesday, Thursday. And I want to do yoga Saturday, Sunday. That's what my brain said to me. That's what my excellence oppressed brain said. And I was like sitting in my house like, that is bananas. That is bananas. That's what my inner voice says. That's what I expect of myself. I'm like, that is the workout regime of somebody who can afford to be excellent at working out. I cannot afford to be excellent at working out because what that costs me is utilizing the tiny bit of energy I have on the other things, like taking care of my relationship with me, with my kids, and with my husband. That's my priority right now. Keeping work in its appropriate box and letting myself use the rest of my time and energy on my relationship. So I said, you know what? We're just going to go on a walk. We're just going to go on a walk and we're going to let that be enough. And I had to really make that internal shift to let myself put my shoes on and leave the house. And I give that example to let you know that like I am really on this journey with you. And if you feel like crazy because of how hard it is, like you're doing mental gymnastics just to let yourself practice self-care, like you're not alone. And it's something that a lot of us are struggling with. And it's not my fault. It's not your fault. There's just so many layers of messaging around what we are allowed to have in this life and what we feel like we should be good at. And again, there's a cost. And I think a lot of us are not thinking about the cost. A lot of us are like, well, if I was great at all these things, think about how great my life would be. I'd be so fit. I've had all these great relationships. I would be promoted at work. And it's like, is that realistic though? Is it realistic that you are going to be great at all of those things without there being a cost to some other area of your life? And so as you start to think about all the things that you have been prioritizing and going, okay, I feel pressure to be excellent here, so I'm going to give in to that pressure and I'm going to be excellent here. I want you to ask yourself, is this really that important to me? And then if you realize the answer is no, I want you to ask yourself, how can I lower the bar here? And actually like visualize what that looks like or write down what that looks like. Because if you don't, your brain is going to default to the perfect version of fitness, to the perfect version of motherhood, to the perfect version of homemaking, to the perfect version of home organization, to the perfect version of showing up at work, to the perfect version of your marriage, to the perfect version of, making organic meals that are well balanced, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the question I really want to leave you with here is, how can I lower the bar here? How can I lower the bar here? Whenever you feel like, whenever you feel like pressure in your chest and you're just like, I feel like I need to be great at this. Ask yourself, how can I lower the bar here? Remember, this is not that important to me. Like if your priorities don't fit on a Post-it note, I was looking for my Post-its. They're like down there. If they don't fit on a Post-it note, you have too many priorities. And if it doesn't fit on that Post-it note, I want you to ask yourself, how can I lower the bar here? And I want you to say, good enough is still good. Good enough is still good. Or another mantra I love is, I'm allowed to be bad at some things. Being okay at some things does not make me a bad person. Being bad at some things does not make me a bad person. Being bad at some things does not make you a bad person. Being mediocre at some things does not make you a mediocre person. We need to detach how great or not great we are at something from our self-worth. We really need to give ourselves that gift. We have to start there, because it's like without it, excellence, while looking shiny and beautiful and desirable on the outside, can actually be really ugly, constrictive, and like it can really be like bondage. It can really prevent you from thriving and living the life that you actually want and need for your happiness. So I hope that episode wasn't too unhinged. I know my energy is like super low, but I really wanted to get this message out to you with the hope that it can help you let yourself off the hook a little bit and let yourself live a less excellent life. All right. Love you guys. And I will see you in my next episode. Bye.